One of these Honda 250s is not like the others, which means if you're a beginner or casual trail rider, you might want to stay away from two of these. So first, let's just compare the main differences between the CRF250F, 250R, and the 250RX. The CRF250F is Honda's 4-stroke air-cooled trail bike. This has lower performance, it has about 20 horsepower, has a lower seat height, and it's made for beginners or casual trail riders. And if you want a low maintenance trail bike that requires as little work as possible, it has nice plush suspension and engine characteristics that make it really easy to ride and learn how to use the clutch, which will make you a confident trail rider much faster if you're just starting out. Then the CRF250R is the 4-stroke liquid cooled motocross bike. This is the top of the line race bike for racing on motocross tracks with jumps and whoops. It has a really powerful engine, at least 40 horsepower, with a close ratio transmission, which makes it hard to learn how to use the clutch because you got to use the clutch and the throttle a lot and slip it a lot, and you stall it really easily because you got to get going a lot faster so that the bike doesn't stall. And then the CRF250RX is based on the motocross bike, but it's the enduro or cross-country model, which means it still has pretty much the same power because it's based on the same engine, but it's detuned slightly. It has a little bit more bottom end and mid-range power to make it a little more manageable when you're riding off-road or on the trails. But make no mistake, this is a race bike. So if you're just starting out, it is possible to ride if you're out in the open or really easy trails, but once you're getting into tight technical trails, the snappy power is going to be really hard to control and manage without whiskey throttling and hitting a tree. So which is best for a beginner? Well, if you haven't figured it out already, my recommendation is the CRF250F, because the power is super manageable and beginner friendly. It has really good low RPM torque, which means right off of idle it's super smooth, but it has good power, and the heavier flywheel weight makes it easy to get traction without stalling. So the heavier weight, it spins the engine up slower, which gets rid of some of that snappy, jerky feeling and gives you more traction when riding in slippery conditions, but that also means it slows back down slower as well, where a race bike, it revs up really quickly, but then it revs back down really quickly, making it easy to stall or flame out, which is really frustrating when you're on a tight and technical trail or if you're just starting out. So 20 horsepower may not seem like a lot for the 250F compared to the 40 horsepower race bike, but 99% of us don't need more than 20 horsepower when we're riding single track trails. And why is that? Well, how often are you holding it wide open or at like 8,000 RPM plus? Not very often when you're on the trails. You're probably going to be in the 3,000 to 6,000 RPM range, which is where the 250F trail bike shines. It has really smooth torque, where the race bikes, they're still building up power, and then once they get above that, they get really snappy, which breaks the tire loose, your rear end starts sliding around if you don't have really good throttle control, and it makes it more exhausting to ride because you're constantly pushing and pulling on the bars trying to keep it in control. So the 250F is definitely best if you're a beginner, but what about trail riding? Is it still the best? Well, if you're just starting out, yes, obviously. But if you're a more experienced rider, the 250RX is a good option, and especially if you're riding faster, more aggressive trails where you're going at least 20 miles an hour, because the 250F with softer suspension, it'll soak up bumps better at lower speeds like 5 to 15 miles an hour, where the 250RX, the stiffer suspension, it's not going to soak up those bumps as well, making it more jerky and exhausting unless you're riding faster. And once you start riding above like 15 miles an hour, the 250F trail bike, it starts to beat you up a little bit because it doesn't have as much suspension travel, and you're more likely to bottom it out and get bucked off of the bike. So if you're a beginner or novice or just getting back into trail riding for the first time in like 20 years, I recommend the 250F, where if you're a more experienced, you're intermediate to expert level rider, the 250RX might be a better option if you like to ride a more aggressive bike with more power and higher tech suspension. And if you are just starting out trail riding and you want to prevent crashes that can lead to injuries, I got a free workshop that you can sign up for right now. You can get instant access and it's totally free. You can head to motocrosshideout.com/workshop or click the link in the description below.